I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We regret the vote that has just taken place. However, we'd like to underscore that nobody can hamper Russia as a permanent member of the Security Council from raising issues here that we deem to be important and under agenda items to which they pertain. Your vote will not have an impact on this, during which those states who are claiming to be independent regarding their foreign policy have gone back to their old instinct and just are supporting the scenarios which run counter to the principles of the Security Council and its rules of procedure. Now, you are more concerned about not solving problems, but rather as to which agenda item should prevail for this meeting. Frankly, we are thinking about some real issues here. You're discrediting now the Security Council, just as the Ukrainians, with their actions, have discredited the GA. Yesterday, after Russia asked this meeting of the Security Council to be convened, our Western partners sought to present the situation as such, so that Ukraine and not Russia asked for it to be convened. Please go slowly here. Since you have put procedural issues over the interests of other people, I am not going to take the floor under the agenda item that is organized based on the letter from the permanent representative of Ukraine. I will just stick to my remarks here. On the 25th of November, 3 naval vessels of Ukraine illegally crossed Russia's border and moved towards the Kerch Strait. They did not respond to the customs vessels and Black Sea vessels urges from Russia, which were asking for the vessels to move normally through the Kerch Strait. As I said, this was in violation of the UN Charter and the norms of international law, including Article 19 on the International Law of the Sea of 1962, that determines the rights of neighboring states to provide movement in their areas, and also peaceful movement for the Russian Federation in the Black Sea region. We consider such steps as a violation of Russia's sovereignty. These illegal acts meant that the Russian customs vessels had to use force. Thanks to their restraint and their high professionalism, there was no victims caused. The 3 people who were injured were provided with necessary medical help, and there's no threat to their lives, and these are members of the Ukrainian crew. Responsibility for this incident is borne by those people who gave the crew the illegal command. The vessels are in Russian ports, and criminal investigations have been started. Mr. President, recently Kiev has refrained from a gross violation of the Russian border. The Sea of Azov, which is an internal sea for Russia and Ukraine, has bilateral agreements in force, and Kiev was freely using these agreements. After the building of the Kerch Bridge just 2 months ago, the Ukrainian naval vessels, in an unhindered way, went to Berdyansk. So in other words, so there was no problem with the use of the Kerch Strait, and they were well aware of the rules, and they had stuck to the rules. And it was just a check that took 3 hours by Russian customs vessels to check for any issues. Inter alia, this was necessary given the threats posed by Ukrainian radicals who said that they wanted to blow up the Crimean Bridge. Now, what changed yesterday? Why 3 Ukrainian naval vessels had to be detained by Russian vessels in that area? This provocation was pre-planned, that's obvious, and it was with the full connivance of Western states that de facto have just given carte blanche to any actions taken by their subordinates. In August, there was Mr. Yelchenko in the Security Council, and he talked about preparing some unpleasant surprises for Russia. At the beginning of November, his delegation in the GA had a resolution on the Sea of Azov and related to Russia. And support for this anti-Russian document was something that they found earlier. So what worked best there? Well, it was that this is now in the Security Council, this issue. Furthermore, over recent months, Kiev, with the support of Washington, hammered up the issue of the so-called Sea of Azov. And this is just because no plans to set up a new military base in Russia exist. So the idea there is just to provide protection and security for the Crimean Bridge. All of these manipulations in international organizations are things that the Ukrainian authorities need in order to solve the problem. On the 21st of November, those people who have been looking into the tragedy outlined the date. The fifth year protest since in Maidan Square. It's clear that everybody has lost faith in those who pushed forward that dignified resolution. Over the past 5 years, all of our neighbors seem to be pleased. Industry, everything collapsed, however. The West, and first and foremost the US, despite the interests of everybody, have used every means possible to put in millions of dollars into the structures in Ukraine and have just pushed forward Ukraine's geopolitical process. Its main aim is to create division in Ukraine and to pit against each other two brotherly nations, Russia and Ukraine. Although it's already clear that these plans have not been fully carried out, and anybody who's involved in it is lost authority in the eyes of the Ukrainian people. The best confirmation of this is the very low ratings of President Poroshenko. It's just shameful for him. But they're just very soon. They're coming up in 4 months. So how can he maintain power in these circumstances? It's clear. Organized provocation and once again accuse Russia of everything. Inflate his own ratings and put himself forward as a savior of the nation, saving himself from the mythical Russian act of aggression, and impose martial law. This is precisely what the Kiev authorities are trying to do. So what is the idea of imposing martial law? And of course, it's going to be extended. We all understand what this is about. This is about cancelling the elections, despite all of Poroshenko's assurances to the contrary. Over these past 5 years, through brainwashing and total anti-Russian propaganda, hatred and enmity towards Russia has been fostered. There have been non-democratic methods used, and they have been brainwashing the opinion of the passive majority. However, ladies and gentlemen, my own people do not hate the Ukrainians. We still love them. We believe in their wisdom, and we are very welcoming to them. And we listen to what they say about their suffering, their poverty, and the lack of the rule of law there, suffering in their rich country. And so we do understand that people are leaving because they understand that that ship is sinking. Yes, sirs, your 5-year anti-Russian political project that should just have been called an anti-Russian project is clear to all those that you are well aware of the so-called Maidan reforms that are not moving forward. In fact, they're just pushing Ukraine closer to the brink. In these circumstances, all people are aware that the situation is facing bankruptcy, and what we're talking about here is war. This is why. It's not because of the mythical Russian act of aggression, but really what is the idea is just to stoke the flames of the war in Donbass. We see Ukrainian nationalism and Russophobia, and what is happening here is that this plan was worked out a long time ago. There was a proper plan worked out, including the Security Council, the Minsk agreements, in other words. It's no secret that the desire in other words, Washington could just resolve this conflict in the east of Ukraine in a 10-minute period. So we are moving towards the March election, and what the Maidan team that is facing bankruptcy needed was a serious worsening of the situation, and ideally it needed war. So once again, it needs to focus on anti-Russian rhetoric to ensure people that none of the problems are their problems or caused by the leaders or the Western backers, but rather by Russia. As opposed to you, we in Russia are not scared of calling a spade a spade. We're trying to look at how the neighboring states acted, and during the Second World War, they actually killed thousands of Poles, Jews, and Russians. Your Ukrainian subordinates are discrediting these universal values on a daily basis, the ones that you so clearly proclaim. We believe in them, we promote them, and we develop them. As regards the state borders of Russia, well, you don't need to worry about that. Our country has never caused the first blow, but it knows how to protect itself. The population of Crimea and other regions of Russia are properly protected. We know that the delegation that initiated the vote, looking forward to the next meeting in order to state their opinion, we know that they will repeat the well-known mantra about aggression, annexation, and occupation. But we know what they're not talking about, the fact that the regime in Kiev does not want peace. It's not striving to build and promote a dignified life. They don't want dialogue with their own people in the East. They don't actually want European values that they constantly bang on about. The only thing that Kiev politicians want is to maintain their own power and justify their own failings by the acts of the Russian aggressor. And the sponsors of this regime just want domination by undermining the good neighborly relations between brotherly countries and peoples in Europe, Asia, Africa, and by the old Roman principle of divide and conquer. Rather than repeating the past, we need to learn from our mistakes and build a new world built on multilateralism, mutual respect, and indivisible security. And we urge everybody to do that and respect that. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the